Brothers and sisters, we have just heard two short readings that followed one after another in the Gospel of St. Matthew. The first reading was the Sunday reading. The second reading was the reading for today's saints, which are the saints of all Russia. And by all Russia we mean the traditional area of the former Russian Empire, which of course includes now independent countries, many of them, Ukraine, Belarus, and many others. Okay, huge territory. So these are the saints we remember today. And I'd like to say that we just have heard that we need to follow Christ. That's the first reading, like the apostles followed him, without questioning, without deliberation or vacillation, sitting on the fence. Follow him. And how to follow him? According to the Beatitudes, those steps leading up to spiritual perfection in the image of Christ. Now, in the Orthodox funeral, we remember during the canon, each first stanza or troparion is dedicated to the holy martyrs, because we ask them to intercede for us, and we also try to contemplate that every Christian life is a path of following Christ, which is a path of confession, confessing the faith and being witnesses. And the word witness is in the Greek is martyr, right? So I'll say it in English. Martyr means witness. That's what it means. Witnessing our faith. Christian life has to be witnessing of this faith. It means that we should live and be Christians not only superficially, not only according to our name, to a label that I'm a Christian, but to be committed followers of Christ, followers of the gospel. And all the saints were, in this sense, they were confessors and they were martyrs, all of the saints. Now, Russian saints and sanctity of the last 100 years is predominantly this literal confession and martyrdom. And this has to be the word of the Russian church to the world, to the modern world, about confessing Christ. Now, I'm preparing a lecture that I need to give in a month's time in Sydney, where we will remember this 100th year anniversary of the two Russian revolutions that happened in 1917. The so-called bourgeois revolution and then the socialist revolution. Okay? And I'll be talking about Patriarch Tikhon, confessor. Now, I've been thinking about the spiritual processes and the scale of this event, this cataclysm, because I'd just like to say that it was so big, the shedding of blood for the faith was so huge that in the first 3 years during the Civil War, after the revolution, in 3 years, 90,000 clergy only, doesn't include lay people, of whom there were many times more than that. 90,000 bishops, priests, monks, nuns were killed in 3 years. They spilled their blood for Christ. 3 years. Now, I'd like to say, just give you an example in my family, one family. My maternal grandmother, Zoya, her father, a priest, none of them are included in this figure, because he died as a confessor in 1931. Her two uncles, who participated in the famous 1917-1980 Sobor, the Synod of the Russian Church that re-established the Patriarchate. They were members as bishops. They died in 1937. One shot, another one thrown into a psychiatric asylum after spending years in a concentration camp. Her mother's brother, another uncle, was shot in 1937, priest Vladimir. Okay, the two bishops were Averki of Chernigov and Pahomey of Zhytomyr, Ukraine, modern Ukraine. So that's one family. The scale of this. We have to remember this. We have to teach our children and grandchildren so they know about this process. What our grandfathers and our forefathers had to endure. And we cannot allow that this just disappears from our memory, from the memory of the church. Look at the Jews. Look how they treasure and remember their Holocaust. Well, what happened in the 20th century was a Holocaust in the Russian church. Numerically, it was a lot bigger than that. But of course, it's a bigger people. So, there was proportionally many more millions. So, you should take an example from them, how they remember their Holocaust. Why don't we remember our Holocaust? But we need not only to remember this, but to understand, to delve in it, to contemplate what it meant, what it means for us, because that specter of communism or revolution that Marx and Engels wrote about in the middle of the 19th century, the so-called Communist Manifesto, published 1848. That specter of the revolution is with us again. But if 100 years ago the revolution was inspired to become a social revolution, now it's a moral, an ethical revolution. But the essence is the same, because every revolution is a spiritual process at the base of it. It's a struggle against God. It's an attempt to get rid of God from our life. That's what a revolution is. Right? And so we need to be aware. We need to remember. We need to learn. We need to read. We can learn a lot from the confessors and martyrs of those times. How they followed Christ. How they rose up that ladder, that staircase. And because if we don't, we will be annihilated by the much more subtle temptations of the new revolution. The revolution that I said operates on a much more refined level, on the level of morality, not class warfare. Right? So anyway, our example today is the icon that you see there. And though that particular icon doesn't even have the image, it's actually a triptych, that full icon, that first shows the baptism of Rus, in the middle, those saints that were canonized by the church before the revolution. That's the central one. And on the left-hand side, when it was painted, there's an image of those who had not yet been canonized, but shed their blood. They're not there, but as I said, every saint is a confessor and a martyr. And every Christian, that means all of us, to some extent have to be, in little ways, in daily temptations. If we are faced with temptations every day, and we either confess Christ or we deny Him in our temptations of our daily life. Amen.